Hi, this is Andy Sherwood with the next in our series of CyberSide Chats, this one about the business case for privacy. As we approach Data Privacy Day, it's important to understand all of the reasons that privacy is important, and the business case for privacy is certainly one of those reasons. If we start at the beginning, which really is dealing with what privacy is, I think it's an important grounding step for us to take so we can understand why privacy matters. Privacy really is a societal norm that is sometimes contained in laws that expresses limitations over the collection, protection, processing, and deletion of information regarding an individual. And in this way, it differs a bit from cybersecurity because the data that may be at issue may not relate to an individual. It may relate to a company, it may relate to a company's processes, or it certainly could relate to an individual. And so privacy is focused really on individuals' information, whether they are individual consumers or customers or employees, or however a company is dealing with an individual. As we'll talk about when we talk about designing privacy later on in the series, there really are four pieces to privacy: the collection, protection, processing, and deletion of information. And each one of those pieces is important to consider. And when we look at demographics, people have different views. Even when they're privacy centric, they'll have different views about each one of those issues many times. Obviously, privacy presents risk for companies. There's the legal risks, but more importantly, there's really the first point, which is the business risks of privacy, including loss of trust and brand damage. And we'll talk a little bit about that today. If we accept that privacy is a societal norm, factors obviously other than the law can impact privacy. And what we see really is demographics and privacy sensitivity being important things to consider when we talk about privacy and we talk about, frankly, the business case for privacy. When we look at the demographics of privacy, there's really three factors based upon the research that the Laureus Institute has done over a number of years. Age, income, and education are the three key factors in looking at demographic issues and privacy. To get to one of the core issues, obviously, why privacy matters to businesses, when you look at the data, again, based upon the Laureus studies over a number of years, simply asking consumers if they've made a buying decision in the last 12 months regarding really concerns over privacy, 39% responded that they in fact had made a buying decision for products or services based upon concerns over privacy. So even if we just stop the analysis there, we see about 40% of the buying population is considering privacy when making these decisions, and it's an important factor for companies to consider as they're looking at what their privacy and data security practices are. One of the ways we've tried to benchmark privacy at the think tank is to look at really how we can put people into categories regarding their sensitivity. And through a variety of research techniques, we've put people into three categories: low, medium, and high sensitivity regarding privacy. As you can see from this slide, it is not the case that privacy is sort of a linear issue. It certainly, the group with the lowest sensitivity, generally speaking, is the under 18 to 25-year-olds. But you can see with the high sensitivity, the sensitivity peaks at 46 to 65 and then drops. And we'll see that play out through the research in a number of different ways. But the point is that 46 to 65-year-old demographic is the most privacy sensitive group that we see out there. And that's important for businesses to consider when we're talking about privacy and privacy practices. Where we see this effect really become clearer is if you ask how sensitive people are about their health data. You can see that lumping around 46 to 65 becomes even clearer, with the drop-off of after 66 or 66 plus being even more dramatic. So it is not the case, certainly, that the older you get, the more sensitive you are about privacy. There is a age component to this, but it is not a linear relationship. One other thing we do note, income is an important factor to look at. And when you ask about sensitivity regarding health information by income, you can see the higher income individuals certainly are more concerned about their health data than others. When we accept that sensitivity ranking as a way to look at this data, the business case for privacy becomes even clearer. So when you consider that 46 to 65-year-olds, certainly with higher net worth, are more likely to be highly sensitive, what you see is when you see that, you sort the first question we looked at, which was, have you made a buying decision based upon privacy? And we look at that through the lens of sensitivity. 54% of that group there in the high sensitivity is making buying decisions based on privacy. And again, when we consider that that is 46 to 65 with high net worth, that's an important thing for business to consider when they're looking at privacy and their privacy practices. One important thing to note, we would draw a distinction, and I certainly did earlier, between privacy and security, and have done that in a number of different presentations and contexts over the years. With consumers, it's not that clear. And so when you ask consumers why they're concerned, or individuals why they're concerned about privacy, you can see the number one reason is preventing identity theft. There's a variety of other answers you can see as you track through, and you can correlate some of those to people who have lower sensitivity, such as there really is no privacy anymore. But the point here is the main reason people are concerned about privacy is fears over identity theft, which means that at some level, privacy and security have somewhat merged in individuals' minds, at least as the privacy professionals and security professionals would look at it. When we get it wrong and we have a privacy incident or a loss of data, one example of how to consider these issues and the impact is to look at what happened in light of the revelations of Edward Snowden. This research was done right before Edward Snowden began really releasing information. And you can see when people were asked who they trusted more, the private sector, the public sector, the data was pretty much equivalent. It was equal between the government and the private companies, and there was a good chunk of people who believed that they, or felt they trusted, the private sector and public sector equally. After the Snowden revelations, when individuals were asked, has your trust in government changed? You can see that almost 40% said that it had in fact decreased. And we see that on the next slide. When we compare the data, and the red column represents the data you've already seen, the orange column is representative of the same question being asked after Snowden began making his allegations. And so you see the drop in trust. And so it's important for companies to understand that when there is a loss of data, people get concerned about how their data is being used. It does have a material impact on trust. Future CyberSide chats we'll talk about why people trust companies and a variety of other factors, but it's important to note that trust is really the first thing that can get eroded in the event of a loss of data. So what are the conclusions we can draw when we look at the business case for privacy? Privacy is more than just legal compliance, and obviously factors, as we saw, other than the law impact privacy. Demographics are critical for privacy, to really understand your customer base and understand who's going to be amenable to what types of privacy conduct. Privacy and security are somewhat synonymous for many consumers. We saw that with the one slide where identity theft was the main concern that consumers had regarding their privacy. Consumers make buying decisions based upon privacy, and obviously consumers that are more sensitive about privacy, not surprisingly, are more likely to consider privacy when they're making purchasing decisions. And as we saw, those consumers were obviously certainly the target consumers of many companies. So it's a critical issue, and it's a critical business issue for companies. And that's the point there. Many companies' target consumers fall within the highly sensitive demographic. So as we're looking at this data, it's important to really note that. And finally, people can lose trust when privacy mistakes happen. We've seen that with the data regarding the loss of trust in the government as a result of the Snowden allegations, and you certainly see that in other contexts as well. So that's a start of the discussion of the business case for privacy. As we talk about Data Privacy Day in 2015, we'll continue to bring people in to talk about the business case for privacy, as well as how to design privacy and how to really integrate privacy into your company and think about these issues in a new way. Thanks again for your time, and look forward to doing more CyberSide chats in the future.